saludamos. Buenas, bienvenidos a este vídeo de unplandivino.net, por así decir, y estamos para continuar con el taller del miedo, donde lo dejamos en el anterior, y volvemos a saludar. Si queréis, pues está Anapi desde Argentina. Presente.
Hola, presente acá.
Claudia
continuando. Sí, también presente, Iván, en el cuerpo.
Y Anaco también. Gracias.
Súper presente.
Vamos a seguir ahí invocando a los miedos, a ver si salen del alma y los expulsamos con mucho cariño. Venga, pues, por así decir, a ver cómo va esto.
Right, let's get on to the next subject, shall we? A lot of you have been asking me about this subject of earth changes, and you think what I'm going to do is give you all of these heads up about earth changes, right? Yeah. I'm not going to give you any heads up about earth changes. What I'm going to do is help you address some of your fears about earth changes. And that's a different thing altogether, right? All right. Now, what we're going to do is just perhaps read a few little things that we've got printed out. On this little session, we'll do a little bit of channeling about earth changes, if we can manage that. And we'll also talk to you about some of the earth changes, and then we'll show you some movie about it. All right. Now, to me, in my mind, the best movie about this subject is going to be 2012, which is coming out, I think, November the 13th. My suggestion is go and have a see of it. I'm one of their greatest advertising fans, I think. It's a good movie, and as far as I can see, and many of the events portrayed in it are actually going to be quite realistic in the future. So it's a lot of channeled or semi-channeled material that's been presented in book form and then written for a movie. And of course, there's some embellishments and so forth. Now, this is one of Mary's most unsavoury subjects, I suppose you'd call it, so she doesn't want to be involved in this. One of the reasons why is because in the past, every time... I've got something on my teeth now.
Y si tengo algo en el diente, sí que se ríe.
Every time I've spoken about earth changes with groups of people, it's greatly polarised people's emotions. And often afterwards, what's happened is I've had lots of people very angry with me. And of course, when you get angry with me, I can feel those projections. So I've had to work my way through those kind of things. And Mary's very frightened of people getting angry with me, because last time that happened, not very nice things happened to me. And therefore not very good things happened to her life either. So that's one of the issues that Mary's having to work through about this subject. I feel quite good about dealing with this subject with everyone, but I want to talk about a few emotions about this subject that you have. I'd like to firstly talk about the ostrich emotion. Is that, how do you spell that? Is that right, ostrich? Something like that. Yeah, you know the notion, this buried head in the sand and hope it all goes away type of notion. Now, many people in the past have got quite angry and upset with me about this subject, and then they've done that. Now, you're totally able to do anything you want, of course, right? That's your emotions, and you're having your free will. That's your experience. So you're allowed to choose to bury your head in the sand if that's what you want. I'm going to keep talking about it, right? Because earth changes are coming. Now, as to when they come, well, obviously that will depend on a lot of factors. Some of it is soul condition factors, and some of it is actually physical factors. That are to do with alignment of with the sun and the earth in the galaxy, and quite a number of other issues. Now, you can read about all of them on the internet, so I'm not really interested in talking about all of them. They don't interest me very much at all. All that interests me is you helping you with your soul condition about this issue. Does that make sense? Because, to be frank with you, I would love for the majority of you to survive it. The reason why I'd love for that is because the earth is going to need people who are in better soul condition, who are able to show others how to live in harmony with the earth in the future. And if we all finish up passing, we'll have to all start again. So all of you people here who are all living on the coast and doing your thing and feeling like you want to bury your head in the sand about the whole issue, that's up to you. I think I would prefer that you want to live alongside of us. In dealing with the future events myself, that's what I would prefer to see. What you do is totally up to you. Now, all of that sounds like a lot of people said, oh, now AJ's just being manipulative and whatever else. No, I'm not. I just don't want to have to do the same work again. Honestly, and can you imagine the environment? Instead of having this beautiful, pristine hall to do it in, we'd have to do it out in the sticks somewhere where there's probably for some time not being any power generation, and we'll have to get together a heap of solar panels or whatever else just to get an amplifier to speak to a group of people. And can you think of all the, it's a lot easier, isn't it, to deal with this issue now than it is later? And to be frank with you, it's a lot easier for you now to deal with this issue right now than it is going to be later as well. Well, can you imagine? Earth change events occur. Let's just put a bit of a scenario to you. By the way, I'm not going to just talk about specifics so much. But I'm going to give you some details of what may occur here, for example. Imagine for a moment here that firstly there's an earthquake around 9 on the Richter scale, which is a massive, massive earthquake. Imagine that, all the way along this coast. All right? So you've got all these earthquake events happening, and then out in the sea, in the Pacific, the landmass rises very, very rapidly. Right? Very rapidly. It's 5,000 feet or what, 2,000 metres or so under the sea, and it comes up overnight. Right? And then you've got all this water displacement. Huge amounts of water. So you just had an earthquake. There's no power. Right? There's no pumped water coming to you. And now you're also going to have to handle a water event hitting the coast, where the water is maybe 100 to 200 metres high. Right? So it's not your average little wave. It's something pretty big. Now, can you imagine the devastation of that? Just those two events only. And by the way, that's not the only potential of what may occur in this region. But just those two events only. What would happen to us as a group of people? This whole coast, if you think about the whole coast, you're not going to see much of it left, perhaps except for Buttering, maybe, because we're on a high hill here, right? And then, of course, a bit more inland. And instead of having the sunshine coast, we'd have to call it the Mullaney coast or something like that, right? These are kind of things that may happen.
Aquí habría que buscar a qué se refieren con la broma esta. El cambio de nombre de la costa. La costa, esto literalmente es sunshine, es como brillo del sol, o sea, es como aquí llamamos la costa del sol a una costa, y habría que cambiarle.
So when I say may happen, there is a high potential of likelihood of these things happening. This is getting channeled from many different sources. You're not hearing this from me. There's all sorts of spirits channeling through all sorts of different people that these events are going to occur. There's even some spirits channeling that Australia won't even exist anymore. Because they say that there will be a 2-kilometre high wave that hits Australia, which of course would wipe out pretty much all of Australia. Now, I don't personally believe that, but when I present this material, when you get a printout of this material downloaded from net, I'm going to put some of these quotes in the material from other people so that you can start having some of this fear that you're trying to deny or get away from. So the ostrich emotion is a very big emotion in us, you know. What we do is we hope that something's not going to happen. Of course, it may not happen, and that's what connects with our hope that it's not going to happen. And then we don't do anything about it happening, the potential of it happening. All of you, or most of you, have the ability to work through different emotions on this subject. All of you also have the ability to survive any coming events. Just by changing your soul condition. But some of you also have the emotion that I'm going to put it all off, my changes to my life, I'm going to put it all off to the last minute. You know, like, I'm sure AJ's going to let us know a week in advance type of thing, right? And it's not going to work like that, you know. And there's going to be a series of events that occur over a long period of time. And when I say a long period, maybe even 2 or 3 years of time, a series of events. And you know, at the beginning of those events, we might be having a chat, but do you think there's going to be Earth satellite stations for us to continue having those chats? And do you think I'm going to have the fuel to get to the coast? Anymore? Probably not. Do you know what I mean? And unless I can teleport, there's no other way probably to get here easily. So we can't have those discussions after that point. So you won't know unless you keep yourself informed and you develop your own relationship with God and your own relationship with your spirit friends, then you'll know. So can you see there's a lot of things involved in this particular subject? My feelings are, if you want to bury your head in the sand, you're totally able to. I am not, this is not a fear discussion for me. Now, while I recognise that for many of you it might be a fear discussion, and to be frank with you, that's your problem. Right? In the sense that it's your fear. And you need to let yourself work through that fear. And I'm not trying to scare you here. Why am I trying to scare you? No, I'm not trying to scare you here. What I'm trying to do is ask you some questions about love of yourself.
Ahí ha bromeado, claro, con lo de no os estoy tratando de asustar y, como ha dicho, creo que algo así como, bueno, pero en realidad, sí, bueno, no sé. Pero en realidad es esto.
Now, how is love of yourself involved in an earth change discussion? Well, isn't that quite obvious, really? If I loved myself and I knew from all these different sources that there's going to be some earth-based events that are going to affect my life, and I have a roundabout time frame that they're going to happen any time between now and, you know, maybe 2016 or something, over the next, say, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever.
Que como vemos, luego lo comentamos, pensaban que a lo mejor pasaba antes.
And I know they're going to occur then. If I loved myself, wouldn't I just make preparations for that? That's not a fear-based discussion, isn't it? That is a love-based discussion. And if I loved other people, would I rely on them to make the preparations for me? Of course I wouldn't, would I? So, you know, it's lovely that ones like Peter and where is Graham and who are the others who have paid for the property out at Brad and some of the others who have paid for the sanctuary. It's lovely they've done that. And it's also lovely that they've said to you that you can go out there anytime you want. That's lovely too. But at the end of the day, if I don't provide for myself, am I being loving to Peter and to Graham and Jen and Brad and these other ones who have paid for that property? Does that make sense? Am I being loving to them? If I'm expecting them to be the people that do everything and I do nothing, but then I expect at the end of the day, if I want somewhere to run to, I go there. That doesn't seem very fair to me, does it? Does it seem fair to you? Like, does it seem loving to you? That's the way it is at the moment. So we need to look at that. Right? We need to look at our own emotions in that. Now, also we need to look at our law of attraction. There's been some things suggested about being able to do, like I've heard back from some people that some people seem to think that I know everything. What? When have I said to you I ever know everything? When have I said that? Haven't I said there's only one being in the universe that knows everything? Who's that? And if you connect with God, then you'll get to know us eventually. The more you connect with God, the more you'll get to know, right? Isn't that right? All right, so you relying on me to know more than you know is ludicrous. Whether I do or not know more.
Ya sea que sepa o no sepa más de lo que sabe. Ya, o sea, aquí está. Ha dicho, ya sea que sepa o no, sigue siendo ridículo.
Then you know, it's still ludicrous to rely on me with it. Can you see that? So stop relying on me with these things. Stop relying on other people to do things for you and start preparing for what you personally believe is going to occur. Now, if you don't personally believe it's going to occur, then don't prepare. You don't have to. I'm not going to stop you coming from groups anymore to learn about divine truth just because you never prepared for earth change events. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not an important issue to me. I want to survive them because I want to stay here and teach some more. That's my desire. What's yours? Is yours the same desire, or some of you I know don't have the desire? Some of you have the desire to pass. I've heard you say it. I've heard you say, if I've got to go and change my life that much, I'd rather pass. I've heard some of you say that. Now that sounds a bit suicidal to me, but anyway, it seems to be an unloving emotion, don't you think? And some of you have said also, I don't want to do it until right near when I have to. well, you know, while that sounds all logical, it doesn't seem like a very loving thing for other people or to yourself. Like to run around at the last minute in a panic. You have to use a mic, Pete. And yeah, what if you get it wrong?
Ahí le ha preguntado ese Pete, ¿y si te equivocas?
What if you get the timing wrong?
O sea, si te equivocas en cuanto al momento, al tiempo, añade a él, Miller.
Or whatever. And then I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't really matter to me much, this issue. And I'm going, what? How can it not matter to you? Don't you want to teach others divine truth that you're learning? Like, we've talked about so much, all of the different opportunities we're going to have here on the earth. Compared to being in the spirit world of learning more divine truth. Right? And also teaching and helping others. It's like, oh, what about all these spirits who are in dark places? Do you think there's going to be less of them after this event? No, you know, what if, like some spirits have estimated up to 54% of the Earth's population is going to pass. Right? That's been some of the spirits' estimations. Now, by the way, there's survivalists who are receiving other spirits' information who say 95% of the Earth's population is going to pass. Right? I don't agree with that, but that's what they say. So let's say we go for conservative estimates from spirits that different spirits have given, 54%. That's one heck of a lot of people. That's 3.5 billion people who are passing in their current condition. Without a knowledge of divine truth, without a knowledge of divine love, many of them on natural love paths, firmly ingrained in natural love paths. Like, how much help are they going to need? Lots of help. Now, can you imagine, the spirit world's been preparing for this for years, right? And there are a lot of preparations that have gone on in the spirit world for the passing of these amounts of people. But there is so much we can do, particularly if we develop ourselves emotionally. There's so much we can do in leading, in also becoming the person who leads other people into this new place. And that's not going to be a position of power, by the way. That's going to be a place of service. So if we're not learning to serve others now, then, and we want to boss others around or be powerful about others, and manipulate others, then obviously we're not going to have the right attitude either. This so many emotions in this that we need to work our way through, right? So let's start working our way through them. Now, what I've been doing is just collecting little bits and pieces of different people's channelings about this issue. And James did some channeling over the last few days that I'd just like to read for a moment. I'll just read some snippets of it for you. The feelings of fear are the ones that demand your attention at this time. These have been dominating your functioning for some time and are arising for attention. Many things have happened which have triggered your fears. The coming earth changes are causing fear in you. Although you feel that they are not bothering you as much as they are. You have felt within you an urge to move away from the city for many years and have done nothing about this. And now fear that you have lost valuable time. You also now fear that you don't have the money to allow you to move in the way that you desire. Feel these fears and allow them to pass through you, as while they persist, they will drive your behaviour. Earth changes will occur and have the potential to be very severe indeed. Many people will pass over and the face of the earth will change considerably. Because these changes can be so massive, people are resisting acknowledging that this is a reality for them. Many feel that they don't want change of this magnitude and resist even the thought of it. If you ignore something, then it will go away. As you have said amongst yourselves, the best one person can do is deal with their own feelings and persist in the divine love pathway. You must pay heed to your own desires, as there is error persisting with you in your present state of living, that if that is not what you truly desire. I just want to comment about that. Many of you have had for many years a knowing within yourself that there is this earth change stuff happening. Coming up, haven't you? What have you done about it personally? Now, some of you 25 years ago moved up to the hills, and then 20 years later you thought, hasn't come yet. Let's move back down to the beach, you know? And so some of you have even done that, right? But you're not actually listening to your own hearts, right, on this subject. Now, many of you have known for many years in the sleep state, in your sleep state, obviously you leave your body and you're in the spirit world in your sleep state. And many of you have known for many years that these things are happening, and even the intensity of what's going to occur. And yet, we choose often to still live our life the same way as we've always lived it. Now, does that make much sense to you? if you look on that. You have had, like, I'm not talking about my desires here. I'm saying I can feel in you your desire to listen to these things, right? Right? You have had a desire, before you met me, many of you knew about this earth change stuff, right? I had nothing to do with that. You knew this before you even met me. Some of you muscle tested it, some of you had mediumship with it, some of you did all sorts of things, but you found out, and even through your own feelings found out things. Is that not correct? Right. So why are you doing something about it? There's got to be an emotion. Can you see that? What's the emotion? We've got to face those emotions. What is the emotion stopping me from acting upon my own desire? Right? So what's the emotion? What kind of emotion? One emotion might be this one. The changes are going to be so big that I don't know if I want to live after them. That could be one of the emotions, couldn't it? That we need to face. Another emotion could be the changes are going to be so big that I'm going to be uncomfortable. Well, yes, of course you're going to be uncomfortable if you don't make any preparations. Like, do you think you're going to have a dunny to sit on if you don't make a dunny to sit on for the earth change events, right? Of course not. So you're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to have to squat if that's what happens to you when you survive, right? And don't you come going to my house hoping to use my toilet. I'll say I told you, you remember that, what's the date today? 25th of October 2009. Remember I told you to make a dunny for yourself. Right? Use your own dunny, right? Now, that's the thing we need to bear in mind, is that all of us have this self-responsibility. Now, many of you don't believe that earth changes are occurring. Fine, you don't have to believe them. You don't even have to believe them to continue coming. That's fine too. Like, I don't expect you to believe them or not believe them. That's up to you. But many of you do believe them. And yet you're not doing anything about them. Now then, but there's got to be an emotion in that for you. What's the emotions in that for you? Jen, could you just pass the mic to Jen? Thank you.
You've only got to watch the general news, or right in our backyard, there was recently a dust storm that came from down South Australia up into Brisbane. Now, on that day, I drove to Brisbane thinking that I would be fine. And I'm convinced about earth changes. But I thought I would be fine getting to my son's house at Stafford. The amount of chaos that was on the road on that particular day.
Just from the dust storm.
Was astronomical.
Yeah.
And I thought I had time.
Yeah.
I thought I had enough petrol.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be okay until I got into the middle of the chaos.
Yeah.
That, and you've only got to look at the news in the last little while, the amount of tsunamis in our general region that have been listed. What's the website, Graham? Yeah. That shows that the earth changes are actually upon us.
They're already happening, yes.
Yes. That it's, so even if you don't do things emotionally, and I'm not suggesting you don't, you just have to look at what's happening in the news to know.
Yeah. Can I just talk about this though? If you choose to do physical things to address this issue and not to deal with your emotions, do you know it's not going to hardly make any difference to your law of attraction? So you could choose to actually not deal with any emotions about this, but then go and get a whole supply of food. Like I read on the website recently, I was watching these websites and some of them interest me a lot and some amuse me quite a lot. But there's this one survivalist, Australian survivalist website where you can't mention who you are and you can't say your own name, and they have all these silence rules. But they were talking on this website about the guns that they're storing and all these different things that they're doing, building bunkers and all. These are serious people. Like, aren't they serious? They were building bunkers and they're doing all sorts of things. Many of the Ranther followers, the people who think they're following Ranther, is probably the better way to say it, but many of them have been doing this for many years, building these places, right? And quite often I look at all of that and I go, well, if you can't change your soul condition, the law of attraction isn't going to work very well for you in those situations even then. So my suggestion instead is to do a combination of things. Deal with the soul condition reasons, firstly, why you haven't acted up till now. So what's going on inside of you? If you haven't acted up to now, why haven't you? What's going on inside of you emotionally? If you have believed that earth changes are going to occur, why are you still putting off doing something about it? And sometimes I hear people say, oh, but it's nice and comfy down the coast here. We're right by the beach. It's lovely to walk along the beach. Yeah, I know. Myself and Mary enjoy that every time we come here. That's very true. But why haven't you prepared something else? You know? And also you've got to start thinking and feeling about what's going on for you emotionally in this interaction with these events. Because emotionally there's a lot going on here. A lot of you are so afraid of what's coming that you don't want to act about and do something about it. And some of you are so afraid that you're even considering, at the soul level, you're considering that it's better to pass than stick around. Right? And I can assure you it's not going to be better to pass than stick around. It also is going to be more fun if you stick around. Because there's a lot to do here on Earth, and it'll be great to be a part of that process. Right? It's just going to be so much fun. So we can enjoy, I'm serious, right? And it's just going to be so much fun to stick around and see what's going on, and see the world change in one generation. Right? Isn't that going to be so awesome? It's like, do you think we're going to be worried about, you know, the law that we broke yesterday? You know, I'm not talking about God's laws. I'm talking about, you know, well, no, I was thinking more about you're not allowed to build that little teepee on that block of land because of all of these rules, right? Do you think they're going to worry about that after the? Of course not, right? They're going to be wanting to build houses galore because a lot of people are not going to have any place to live. Right? And then we're going to have to live more in harmony with the environment because a lot of the environment's being destroyed, right? So that's going to be a great impetus to actually learn about, you know, proper culture, you know, in terms of growing food and vegetables and living more in harmony with the environment. So when you have an opportunity to go to a course about living in harmony with your environment, what do you stay home for? Oh, you know, AJ said I shouldn't go to that course. So I never said that, you know. Why would I suggest that? There's been people offering their services to you to show you how to do things like permaculture and other things like that, right? Take them up. Doesn't matter where they're from. You might be able to talk to them about the divine love path. They talk to you about what they feel. Doesn't really matter what the outcome is, but you'll learn something in the process of how to look after yourself. Why would you put that off? You see what I'm saying? Often we're putting all of these things off because we're just quite afraid. And that's the issue we face.
How do you know if you are driven by fear or not in wanting to shift?
In wanting to shift?
Move
to another location, you mean? Well, you know, one of the main things you realise after you start progressing a lot is that you start realising that when you have a desire, things happen really smoothly, right? When you have a fear, things happen in a very haphazard and unfulfilling way. So notice what your law of attraction is. So if you have a pure desire, you'll find the right property you want, you'll find all the different things, everything starts fitting in together, things work together really easily for you, it all fits together. But if you're finding that actually your law of attraction is you're getting a block here and you're not allowed to move there and something happens there and you can't do this here, then probably you're acting out of fear and you need to just let those fears trigger you. those events trigger you. So let the law of attraction show you which mode you're in. When you're in desire, things will definitely usually occur.
Las cosas definitivamente ocurrirán, normalmente, añade también. Le falta eso.
Now, when I'm in desire, I focus firstly on my emotion. I don't focus firstly on selling the house. I don't focus firstly on going and getting a larder full of rice or something like that, right? I focus firstly on dealing with the emotion. And when I work through the emotion, then I'll feel what's the best thing to do. And I won't run around in a panic doing it. I say, oh, we've got to get in the earth change. AJ talked about the change, it's terrible, away I go. It's not like that, right? And you need to start trusting yourself and your law of attraction with this. Not me, trust you. Trust how you're feeling on this subject. What do you feel? Now, I'm suggesting to you, if you feel you'd rather pass than stick around, then that is a suicidal emotion. And that's not loving to yourself. And do you think when you pass, how good your condition is going to be when you pass, do you think, with that emotion? It's not going to be as good as if you dealt with that emotion, is it? If you deal with that emotion, then you love yourself more. Many of you have an emotion too that, when it happens, I'm sure I'm going to be in the right place at the right time. Well, that might be totally true, but nothing else is going to be in the place with you. Right? Is it? Like, do you think that you're going to have a house in the place with you and a place to grow some plants and food for it? Do you think that's going to happen unless you exercise a desire? Can you see? We've got plenty of warning about all these things. We've got plenty of heads up about it. Oftentimes, many of you have the emotion in you that you want to do something, and yet you haven't done it. So look at why. Look at why. I want to read a bit more of this one because this was quite good. Where is it? As you are well aware, the changes will be followed by massive upheavals of humanity, with many people displaced and many more feeling despair, with even greater displacement from God, with grave doubts that God could ever have done such a thing. Many will perceive it as great punishment. Yeah. How many Christians are going to view it as that? Great punishment. And they'll seek to take revenge on the ones they think that God is punishing. This will usually be anyone but themselves, of course. Don't ignore these thoughts and pay heed to the feelings that they engender. These possibilities are leading many people to want to hide away as far as they can from large population areas. The law of attraction will operate as before during and after the Earth changes as it always has and always will. Therefore, the focus is now and forevermore on what you do within yourselves. You will always draw events to yourself by your soul condition. So this is what you must deal with first. The vital first step is to acknowledge that you do have a soul, and then that this soul is limited by many factors. You do have a soul, and then that this soul is limited by many factors. Those steps you have taken and the consequent steps are those of prayer and dealing with the feelings. Now, James also asked, what extent would Australia be affected by the changes? The answer he gave, the Spirit gave, which by the way was Stephen from the Bible. You remember Stephen, who was called the first martyr, for those of you who have background. Every continent will be affected, and Australia will be less so than that of any other. Even though you hear and read of the possible changes, you really have no concept of the magnitude of the changes or of their impact on humanity. Changes like this have occurred before, but there has never been the numbers of people living in vulnerable locations. The sinking of Atlantis is possibly the largest event of this type that is acknowledged in your histories. There's a lot of fear in you guys.
Y aquí pues han oído un ruido justo cuando ha dicho el hundimiento de la Atlántida. Ha habido algo en los micrófonos y se ha empezado a reír y ha parado, como veis, y les dice, tenéis mucho miedo, ¿veis? No sé si se refiere al público y a los espíritus, todos juntos.
From what you know of the law of attraction, now it is not hard to see that such changes are inevitable. Humanity as a whole has created an environment which cannot be sustained. So changes will simply be the working out of God's laws and have no element of punishment in them. Passing over or losing accumulated possessions are not punishments. God's truth goes much deeper than any of those things. As long as you live, God provides all that you need for peace and happiness, both on earth and in the spirit world. On earth, it's harder to see this, as you've all been led astray by those who would have power. And this has been going on for a very long time. Humanity has become addicted to having everything happen as it desires, rather than recognising that everything happens as God desires, and God's desires incorporate the best interests of everyone and everything. The most essential aspect of Earth changes is the return of humanity to a normal, healthy relationship with God. This relationship will be different from what most now consider to be such a relationship to be. The divine truth will become the norm, and the false will be set aside. And this will happen faster than you consider possible. There is so much change going on in humanity, and most of this is invisible other than to those with eyes who can see it and the awareness to feel it. Accept this without understanding it is beyond your present capacity to understand. The concept that the changes will happen dramatically beginning on a certain day is incorrect. The day spoken of is somewhat an arbitrary date, marking a cyclical turning point. That's 2012, right? Changes are happening all the time, and towards and beyond the date considered, there will be an increase of changes of many sorts, which will be largely considered undesirable. They will not necessarily build to a crescendo, but will increase and then taper off as the precipitating causes which, by the way, are both soul condition and environmental event related. This is not unlike the working with and releasing of your own emotions. You will all require an openness to change, as change will occur and you will need to adapt to those changes. There's more that there in James, and James might like to post that if he wishes to. Sorry? Yeah, it's up to James. It's James's free will. Yeah, so that is from James.
Parece que es este, que no se le va a ver de cerca, este chico, parece joven de aquí. Luego no lo he buscado en internet si está entera la canalización, que luego pues habrá tantísimas que lo mismo es un lío. Pero...
And it actually wasn't from James, was it, James? It actually wasn't from you, was it? It was from Stephen, through James. And so James provided the mechanism by which that could occur. One thing that you need as a medium to understand is that all you're doing is providing the mechanism through which this can occur. Our spirit friends are the ones with the knowledge. They want to give you lots of knowledge, right? But at the moment, so many of us are in terrible fear states that if they gave you a little bit of the knowledge, you'd just go into a panic, and that's not what they want to do either. They don't want to trigger more panic in you. They don't want you to live in your fear or bury your head like an ostrich. What they want you to do is more than that. So that was the ostrich emotion we covered.
Bueno, voy un momento al servicio y vemos si queremos comentar un poco o seguir. Quedan como 30 minutos, hemos hecho ya otra tanda como la anterior y ahora vengo en un minuto. Lo que queda ahora es una parte donde canalizan a Ranta un poquito, pero se trunca un poco la canalización por el estado emocional de la canal, que es la misma Mónica del día anterior, que lo vimos hace un par de meses, que canalizaba espíritus que estaban malitos. Y también es muy interesante lo que queda en este sentido, pero ya hemos visto bueno, lo más importante, yo creo. No sé si estamos todos por aquí, todo el mundo. Claudia, ¿estás con el micrófono activo?
Sí.
Bueno, yo qué desastre yo en la vida, porque mira que lo pensé en irme a Australia, lo que pasa es que como tengo la voluntad completamente dañada, que los impulsos que tengo luego no termino nunca de hacer las cosas muchas veces. Que es sorprendente. Australia, le dice Esteban, que es la que menos afectada. Dale, perdona.
Está bien, por favor. Sentía como toda esta secuencia de la experiencia que por ahí conté en la primera parte que tuvimos de poder seguir tus deseos, pero que al mismo tiempo, por supuesto que estas emociones que son las que bloquean los miedos, te impiden incluso responder, y bueno, lo que vos estás diciendo justamente ilustra eso, ¿no? En el fondo uno sabe, entre comillas, y no cómo avanzar justamente sobre eso en cuestiones muy simples, como conté, decir, quiero comer esto, no quiero comer esto. Me pasa a mí en la vida, que todo el tiempo fue aceptar y someterme porque tenía miedo al rechazo. Pero, claro, es sumamente, al mismo tiempo que te estremece, vuelve a lo simple, siento yo, de decir oración y sentimiento, dijo, ¿no? Es como que lo que venimos viendo en la parte, digamos, de la preparación principal, más, claro, afrontar el miedo a la acción, también. Pero que siempre tendemos a anteponer. Yo le contaba a Ana Pilar que había encontrado una noticia de alguien que había construido en una zona supuestamente basada en la información sí, así premonitoria, ¿no? De los desastres, y que había tomado una montaña, por decirte, te estoy diciendo muy mal, estoy diciendo muy así por arriba, y que había fraccionado y había construido un búnker y que ya había vendido todos, pero tienen todo, o sea, tienen jacuzzi.
¿Y esto dónde? ¿Allí en la Patagonia?
No, en Estados Unidos.
Ah, sí, bueno, en Estados Unidos es brutal lo que hay. Sí.
Ellos se preparan para ataques nucleares, más que para desastres naturales.
Sí, no, ahí están para todo, absolutamente, sí. Eso es por si acaso pasa lo peor de lo peor. Son unos locos total en Estados Unidos, porque debe ser de los peores sitios. Si pasa algo, ahí la gente, como todos tienen armas, imagínate.
Claro, y le contaba a Ana que eran, claro, palacios subterráneos. Claro, y es como te recuerda acá Esteban, primero la condición del alma, o sea, primero la condición del alma, porque obviamente que incluso lo que se venga va a estar supeditado, decía, tanto si crece, o sea, si se potencia, si decrece o aumenta también, o sea, hay una variable muy importante que somos nosotros mismos y que estamos ejerciendo, si bien debe haber ya. Yo recuerdo la primera explicación, yo personalmente que tuve, que fue cuando canalizaron a Raquel, que habló Jesús de los ciclos de la tierra,
sí.
Cómo necesariamente el amor lleva a esto que acaba de decir él, a renovar la relación con Dios. O sea, necesariamente nos llevamos a ese punto, porque es lo que estamos eligiendo, para poder en algún punto como que replantearnos, porque nada nos hace, ¿viste? Porque nada te hace, ¿viste? Todo es dilatar. Y ayer veía en los grupos que están en Telegram, transmitiendo información y relacionado a los medios, lo que justo hoy publicaste algo respecto a un estado respecto del manejo de la información que hacen los medios de comunicación, y Jesús decía, está intrínsecamente vinculado a tu miedo. Entonces, claro, veía, y no puedo dar fe de que sea verdad, tengo el video en un canal, en uno de los canales de Telegram, que decía, acá vemos a un director del CNN, el noticiero, dando indicaciones al equipo de producción de que ya cambien el tema que están tratando y pasen de la pandemia, porque la gente está aburrida, a desastres naturales.
Sí.
Y yo no sé si es cierto o no, pero digo, ese manejo de la información, un poco por lo que decía Jen también,
No,
que
bueno,
sí, que están ocurriendo.
está declarado por los mismos medios, o sea, ya cuando
Claro, sí.
ellos eso lo hacen así, vamos, que eso oferta y demanda, y lo que más venda, y como es el miedo.
Correcto.
Sí, sí.
Claro, sentimos un miedo y necesitamos confirmación, y entonces ellos te sirven, como lo que dijimos un día, el poder es poder poner nombre a las cosas. Entonces, nosotros tenemos toda la confianza desde pequeñitos en la tele. Bueno, pues ellos van a poder poner el nombre. Venga, todos los dolores de cabeza que sentís, que en el fondo es vuestra alma gritando, venga, vamos a llamarles el bicho. ¡Hala, sacar dinero! Y todos los gobiernos corruptos, venga, vamos a ver, no sé qué. Claro, y se ha congregado todo de esta manera tan brutal, como estamos viendo, por esto, porque claro, en el alma debemos tener además muchas intuiciones, más de las que pensamos sobre estos cambios. Hay un miedo ahí latente, entonces de repente hayan aprovechado que te cagas. Y venga, evento 201 del 2019, se reúnen los magnates, venga, vamos a montar a sacar unos poquitos de dinero, vamos a cosechar dinerito antes de que toda esta pandilla se muera. Más poder, más juego. Se están jugando al casino, literalmente, con el miedo y con... Los desencarnados saben esto, muchos, ¿no? Que nos creemos.
Claro,
Pues,
es lo que
claro.
dice Jesús. Los espíritus son los que tienen toda la información. Bueno, están estos que son canalizados y te van,
sí.
digamos,
No
abriendo
es que lo sepan seguro, pero sí. Saben que va a pasar.
Claro, y como que están haciendo un llamamiento. Para mí esto es un llamado a las tres palabras, ¿no es cierto? Humildad, verdad y amor, como que poner proa en eso, focalizar en cómo estamos con eso. Me parece a mí con
Sí,
todo esto que
aclarar el alma,
hablando.
¿verdad? Porque yo estaba diciendo antes, vivir en la nebulosa de nuestra condición del alma, de nuestra voluntad actual, yo tomando esas decisiones que tomaba, venga, voy a mirar un curso hace años cuando no sabían nada de esto, cursos de inglés para entrar en Australia, que es la manera de entrar, era la manera de entrar, pagabas un curso y allí luego ya buscabas trabajito, ya te cambiabas el visado y no sé qué, no sé cuántos. Y claro, empiezas ahí y no sabes, digo, estoy haciendo esto, pero no sabes que lo que te tienes que es en ese momento parar a sentir por qué estoy siendo dubitativo, a ver qué realmente quiero. O sea, necesitas trabajar la humildad, pero como no tenemos ni idea del no somos, ni queremos desear tener idea de lo que significa realmente actuar y crecer y no sé qué, y cuidarnos, y estamos en una nebulosa, y yo estaba en esa nebulosa y no me paré y digo, claro, si yo sé esto, si yo hubiera sabido esto, yo decir, bueno, ahora es cuando lo tengo que... Pero es que en ese momento decir, a ver, vamos a parar, y ahora sentir el miedo, tengo que sentir el miedo, y ya está. Claro, era eso. Entonces, se te ha ocurrido, Ana o sea, al hilo de lo que estás diciendo, la humildad, y de tus propios
Claro.
ejemplos al respecto, porque bueno, allí en la Patagonia, si va a pasar algo, tampoco es muy seguro, estáis en la costa.
Claro, es que recién pensaba que estoy en la misma ubicación geográfica que en Resistencia. En Resistencia hay un corte esquemático que uno está en una olla, ¿sí? resistencia como que la mayoría son sedimentos de tierra, estás sobre sedimentos, ¿no? Y acá en Trelew estás en el valle, así que cualquier evento marítimo te deja sobre marítimo acá y de río, lluvia allá, te deja bajo agua, en tierra sin ningún inconveniente. Y bueno, y otra cuestión es lo que dice de que la ley, por más que vos hagas lo que hagas, si no procesás el estado de tu alma, la ley de atracción, las leyes de Dios se cumplen, no importa qué. Así que por ese lado digo de enfatizar en la humildad para uno hacer ese trabajo personal, esa búsqueda personal de encuentro con Dios y poder discernir a qué lugar ir o quedarse o empezar a hacer desde otro lugar, desde otro pensamiento. No sé muy bien.
Sí, hacer lo que ha dicho esto, hacerlo a la vez es... Sí, porque el problema era ese, que yo he emprendido muchos caminos diferentes de repente, de me voy para acá, me voy para allá, como además no tenía responsabilidades, pero no... Pero eso es lo que dices, lo que ha dicho Jesús y que es lo más importante de lo que han dicho, lo que ha dicho Esteban, ¿no? Es que es las dos cosas a la vez, a ver cómo se hace eso, sí.
Claro. Pero vos sos joven, Iván, tenés tiempo de ir a Australia.
Sí, vale, pero sí, yo soy de vuestra quinta, si me sacáis 2 años.
Ay. Bueno, estamos fuera entonces.
Yo... O sea que tú eres un poco mayor que Clau, ¿no? Anapi. Aquí la única mayor...
Yo tengo 52.
Vale, tú me sacas eso. Yo tengo ahora, en marzo cumplo 48 y aquí la Anako es la veterana.
Yo soy de 70.
Sí. Entonces, nada, pues esto, ir soñando ahí en el estado de sueño, a ver si se os presenta Esteban o algo y a ver si nos da confirmación. Era buena idea que yo me fuera a México con Paco y con Juani y vayamos andando desde ahí, tomando ahí, agarrando las cosas de Ana de Venezuela, Anaco, y bajándonos a la Patagonia, a la montaña, no se sabe dónde, pero es que eso va a estar lleno de búnkeres del ejército israelí y todo eso, entonces no sé yo cómo va a ser.
Hay mucho lugar, así que quédate tranquilo. Hay
Bueno,
lugar.
Mendoza también es muy montañosa, ¿no? Pero también están los Rothschild por ahí.
Bueno, en toda la cordillera ya tiene nombre. Así que no pueden dominar todo. En algún espacio quedará libre.
Claro, ahí se trata de dejarnos guiar por guías.
Sí, eso iba a decir, porque cuando él habló de qué tiene que ver el amor contigo mismo, con los desastres, ¿no? Con los cambios en la tierra y parece que hubiera un abismo entre eso, pero no, siempre volvemos al mismo punto. Y eso, sobre amarnos de verdad, que sería ocuparnos. Por eso en un momento cuando dijiste yo no tenía responsabilidades ahí, tenías la más importante.
Claro.
Creo que todos tenemos esa responsabilidad, nos pasamos la vida hacia afuera y nos olvidamos. Por lo tanto, seguís teniendo esa responsabilidad y ahora, claro, con Dios, con la verdad divina, que sabemos que podemos tener una relación con Dios, a atravesar esto. Siento que es como que, bueno, y de ahí confiar que es la parte que justamente miedo, confianza en los polos.
Sí.
De que lo que va a suceder. Siento también, en un momento yo puse a aprender a nadar, empecé a notar cosas que haría, ¿no? Con mis miedos también, le tengo mucho miedo al agua.
Espera, que soy de niños. ¿Quién es? Cordero. Sí, es de Ana Cordero, gritos de niños y eso, fíjate qué oportunos.
De los miedos.
La he silenciado. Y yo me acuerdo de cuando yo empiezo con todo el rollo este de admitir las verdades más simples espirituales, el hoponopono, empezar ahí a ver, me abro de verdad a eso, después de ver cosas alternativas, de lo de Hammer un poco, no sé cuántos, y de haber visto el truco del 11S y no sé qué. Yo, ese año 2012, cuando estaba el libro aquí en todas las tiendas, el del 2012, y yo estaba en un estado de nerviosismo bastante grande y llegué a tener también a un viaje que hice en coche, que me iba yo solo por ahí, de repente me iba, pero luego volvía, no sé qué, y me iba en plan a lo loco y decía, me tengo que ir. Y una vez tuve como visiones de toda la Tierra, no eran visiones apocalípticas, pero sí que la visión de la Tierra llena de, o sea, el barro, cuando sales de Madrid, todos bastante desérticos, son cultivos, y ves como si todo fuera, como que ves la tierra muy al aire, el barro, todo extensiones, y todo parece como una inundación, que ha venido una inundación y se lo ha llevado, y cosas así, ¿no? Y entonces lo ves, y lo vi en un sentido emocional que daba miedo, pero no es que hubiera visto una inundación del futuro, ni nada de eso, sino como que ahí estaba viendo materiales que en realidad son mentiras, medias verdades sobre cataclismos y no sé qué, y en un momento dado, a lo mejor por influencia de espíritus más bien negativos, pues yo eso lo sentí como muy en negativo, pero a lo mejor eran, o sea, pero como que sentí que era verdad que había sido arrasada por inundaciones muy fuertes, la península, no sé qué, cosas así de ese estilo.
Sí. Impresionante.
Pero de otras épocas, como que lo sientes así, de repente el entorno destrozado y dices, ostras, esto está como representando una inundación que no ha sido tan lejana. Nosotros estamos aquí pensando que no sé cuántos, me vino eso, que aún dudo de lo que era, pero como una sensación sin palabras de la certeza, de la cercanía de esos eventos de inundaciones brutales. Al ver esa tierra lavada, esa especie de que se veía.
Bueno, y ahora en los paseos que hice acá con Ana Pilar, se ven los cañones, en los cañones cuando llegamos a las playas, en todas las sierras que rodean, las marcas del agua, y notás, claro, justamente lo que fue en algún momento todo cubierto por el mar, las huellas, los sedimentos, y te impresiona, porque estaríamos a unos, no sé si miles capaz, pero de las más altos llega a 1000 metros, pero así sea 1000 solo o un poquito menos, sumergidos, si el mar volviera a ocupar ese lugar, y que en algún momento lo fue. Entonces, por ahí esos cambios que vemos así como en las películas un poco, como decís vos, de alguna manera es solo imaginar, porque sí recuerdo yo, y haberle señalado a Ana, ella me dijo, sí, allá se ve con más claridad. Está en una de las playas que fuimos, que se llama justamente Isla Escondida, porque queda así como en medio de todas esas tierras, y se ven las marcas de lo que fue en algún momento, todo
Sí.
agua.
Y es eso, esa sensación, como que, no sé si verdad o no, pero la percepción que tenemos de que las cosas geológicas van muy lentas siempre es falsa. Entonces, es esa propuesta, ¿no? O sea, que parece muy tajante, pero esa sería la propuesta. Sí, porque hay muchas cosas que sí, son un proceso de cuentagotas. A lo mejor, ¿no? Cuando hay muchas rocas, que ves la erosión en las rocas, pues parece... Tampoco sabemos muchas veces, a lo mejor. Incluso con...
Bueno, y el tema del dinero también, para mí. El tema del dinero también es algo que al mismo tiempo, por un lado, es como que, bueno, son 2 años nomás para jubilarme, mientras puedo financiar una preparación y ir viendo, pero otra vez, como dice Jesús, no te vas a ocupar primero de eso. Entonces, claro, entonces cultivar el deseo, asumir la responsabilidad de escucharme y de respetarme sobre todas las cosas, porque eso en mi fachada es muy fuerte, postergarme, negarme, apagarme y procesar ahora esas emociones del dinero.
Bueno, y además es que en Argentina, en teoría, las élites globales y locales llevan muchos años y muchos ciclos de extracción de cantidad de recursos inmensa de las masas a base de inflación o de crisis, etcétera. O sea, en ese círculo vicioso con las masas anhelantes y no sé qué, y esto también globalmente parece ser que va a pasar ahora, más global todavía. Ahora estamos viviendo una grandísima acumulación, en teoría, que están haciéndose los ricos más ricos que nunca, ¿no? ¿Verdad que dicen eso? Toda esta digitalización, todo este rollo, el Bill Gates y esto. Pero en teoría va a haber crisis. Y está viendo, primero la crisis estamos viendo que es en plan humana, ¿no? Estamos inventando mucho miedo, así que los medios... Entonces, faltan que se vaya desplegando más la bestia, esa que veíamos en el Apocalipsis, todas las cabezas.
Claro, y además que un poco lo que decía Jesús hoy cuando nos salimos del cuerpo para no sentir y entra el espíritu que se asocia justamente al terror, de sentir el terror, entonces entramos en esa transacción entre todos, pidiendo al Estado que se haga cargo, los espíritus también, o sea, nadie quiere hacerse, todos proyectándonos, que potenciado. Y por eso siento que, claro, con más razón, un poco lo que acaba de decir también Esteban, que va a depender mucho justamente de cómo estemos, la celeridad y de asumir todo. Por eso puso, a ver, no creo que haber anotado, pero bueno, sí, oración y sentimientos, recuerdo. Pero dijo, bueno, a ocuparse de tu condición como primera instancia, ¿no? A ocuparse de los miedos, sí.
Sí.
Bueno, ahí mencionó el del dinero, el miedo al dinero, sí, me acuerdo, ahí lo anoté porque eso yo quisiera. Por ejemplo, tengo familia en Paraguay está al límite de Brasil, en el Mato Grosso, es familia, y la familia es el pueblo donde nació mi papá vivió en la calle, en la miseria, tuvo mucho miedo, y es un lugar maravilloso para conocer, digo, para pasear, pero podría anclar si quisiera. Mi familia de ese lado siempre me esperó. Pasé una vez por ahí, cuando me iba a Brasil, al Mato Grosso, Brasil. Y bueno,
ahí sí que nos podemos subir a un árbol si hay alguna inundación. ¿Habrá algún árbol que...
Hay cerros hermosos, sí, es todo. Y aparte la gente en Paraguay, si bien tiene una sociedad sumamente polarizada, son muy humildes, y hablo de la humildad, digamos, como cualidad en la vida, así que ellos hablaba y comparaba hace poquito conversando la diferencia de nosotros, que somos muy sucios. Nosotros, hablo como argentinos, tenemos muy polarizado, pero por ejemplo cuando vivimos en la villa, yo viví en la villa, y es sucia la villa, o sea, que vemos nuestra irresponsabilidad, o sea, como ese estado miserable en todo lo que tenemos. En Paraguay ves el ranchito, digamos, capaz construido de adobe, con paja, pero una pulcritud, Iván, que vos ves la señora que se levanta a las 6 de la mañana, barre el patio de tierra, lo barre. ¿Ves la huella? Mi abuela tenía la escoba de yuyo, ves la huella que vas dejando con la escoba de yuyo, el zigzag, lo tengo grabado. Ese patio, o sea, era la casita, el pocito de agua, la huerta si tiene, un basurero tipo como compost, naturalmente, o sea, el hueco hasta donde llevas la basura que está al final del patio, nada más, y eso, y mucha generosidad. Si hay mandioca, si es la época de mandioca, la vecina te da un plato de mandioca, y vos le das, yo maté una gallina y le da un pedazo a la gallina.
Sí.
Eso yo lo viví, y es así.
Siempre lo relaciono con, no sé si será, pero que físicamente la humildad tiene como una vertiente física del hecho de convivir con plantas y ver que te las puedes comer y que tienes que respetar un ciclo que es de muchos días y de mucho cuidado.
Sí, ellos, pero así, y la huertita es, no, el que tiene para vender se ocupará, pero es parte de la casa, digamos, la huertita. Ahí el orégano es natural, el cebollín es natural, o sea, todo el tiempo. Así, sí. Por ejemplo, y es algo que sería restaurador incluso para mí poder conectar con todo eso.
Nada, pues
Lo que uno huye de eso, Iván, uno huye de, no, el sueño del pueblerino, digamos, acá, es ir a la ciudad.
Sí. Sí, pero, y aquí, yo soy hijo de eso, ya os lo comenté, a mi abuela la inculcaron eso y se casó con un hombre mucho más mayor porque iban a Madrid, que era la promesa así. Pues eso, pero es planetario, o sea, todo lo que ha pasado con las ciudades. Que se han convertido en jaulas para el apocalipsis o sea que... Y ha habido lo que ha dicho, nunca ha habido tanta gente en lugares tan vulnerables. Y las ciudades lo malo es que la vulnerabilidad es porque mucha gente junta en malas condiciones se comen vivos entre sí, literalmente, en cuanto hay hambre. O sea.
Sí.
Tú imagínate, millones de personas no acostumbradas a saber lo que es una lechuga en el campo, ¿qué van a hacer? Y ahora todos los jóvenes jugando a matar gente en los videojuegos, no sé yo muy bien, bueno, muchos de ellos. O sea, se ha montado un caldo bastante jugosito para los desencarnados. La cosecha de los infiernos va a ser grande, en teoría. Si va a pasar algo... Así que nada, yo ya convenzo aquí a Juan y a Paco y nos vamos a ver si en Paraguay no piden estar inoculado para entrar y vamos a ir colonizando y os esperamos que vengáis subiendo de embarca por el mar desde la Patagonia.
Claro, por ahora entras por México, empiezan a bajar y yo voy subiendo entonces.
Sí. O a lo mejor directamente a Paraguay, no sabemos. Tampoco sabemos si queremos vivir, o sea que yo estoy mucho en la cosa.
Te iba a decir eso.
Sí.
Te iba a decir eso de ejercer el deseo, que lo estamos ejerciendo cuando y en el ratito que hablaste de los chicos con los juegos, y cómo esto de estar todo el tiempo conectado de la moneda virtual, ¿cómo se llama? No me sale, Bitcoin, o esa es una moneda, no sé qué. Bueno, la cuestión es que están todos ahora conectados, zombies, ya más zombies, porque también trae dinero, o sea, justamente lo que dice, se asociaron en la humanidad a la idea de poder, y ahora entró con la moneda esta, que se te paga por jugar y publicar y no sé qué. Y bueno, veía cómo estamos ejerciendo el deseo, ya lo estamos ejerciendo. Entonces, bueno, sí, a ver para qué lado nosotros estamos ejerciendo el deseo. Nuestra parte, cada uno le toca su parte, claro.
Sí. Bueno, y eso sería ya todo otro tema, porque en las monedas virtuales, que hay muchas, ¿no? Hay dos vertientes, ¿no? Eso tiene el aspecto descentralizador, para que no sea Porque al final todos dependemos del banco privado norteamericano, de la Fed y de cosas así, bancos centrales privatizados. Entonces, sí, ahí. Pero sí, lo del el refuerzo este que se ha hecho en lo virtual, gracias al dinero que a muchos niños les ha hecho independizarse bien y pronto y mejor y ser. Ahí hay de lo peor y de lo mejor, seguramente, sí, reforzando cosas muy raras y, por otro lado, muchas posibilidades. Bueno, no sé si queréis comentar algo también, quienes menos habéis comentado. Podemos parar otros 10 minutos y terminarlo, ya que lo hemos empezado. Hoy comemos rápido algún sándwich, si tenéis ahí la hora mala, y paramos 20 minutos, 10 minutos, lo que digáis, porque aquí, si descanso bien, pues aquí podemos tirar otra tanda igual para dejarlo terminado, porque está interesante lo de después.
Está muy interesante. Sí, yo no tengo problema en lo que decidan.
Sí, no sé, Ana, ¿cómo está? Ana Cor. Yo también, o 10 o 20 minutos, son las
Pues a
14:35.
a las y 20, por ejemplo, de la siguiente hora.
Dale, buenísimo.
20.
A las y 20, aquí son las 6:55, a las 7:20. Vale, entonces, Anacor, hola. Bueno, voy a dejar de grabar. Despedimos al amado público, si es que han llegado. Ay, quería comentar también, que no se me olvide, que os lo comenté a vosotras, pero no creo que lo escuche nadie esto, pero que os acordáis que tuve una conversación breve, que no sé, a ver si la continúo de alguna manera, que no sé muy bien, pero yo creo que le asusté un poco con este Pierre que estuvo con Miller ahí en Australia y que ahora está por Portugal. Y él decía
Sí.
que le había dicho Miller que el noreste de la zona esta de Portugal, noreste de Portugal, que supongo que también en España, aunque bueno, en España somos más totalitarios a lo mejor que en Portugal, que son más tranquilos, quizás esa parte lindante con Galicia allí, le había dicho Miller que también podría ser una buena, a lo mejor, una buena parte. Es una parte que es como está arriba de montañas, no hay mucha gente, hay muchos árboles, y eso es una zona con menos gente y bastante retirada de todo la gran ciudad de Madrid y todo eso, y de las grandes ciudades de Portugal. Lo que pasa es que aquí todo está mucho más comprimido, mucho más pequeño. Ahí en América tenéis muchísimo más posibilidad. Si hay más agua, o sea, si hay sitios con agua, hay sitios con agua y sin casi nadie, muy lejos de ciudades. Aquí no, en Europa no hay de eso, a no ser que te vayas realmente a Rusia y tal. Bueno, entonces yo quería comentar eso de Portugal, que le dijo Miller, que me sorprendió que me lo dijera, que a lo mejor es por algo, ¿no? Eso del noreste. Y que hay alguna ecualdea, además, de un señor que tenía mala fama, que le habían hecho, un señor que estuvo mucho insistiendo en Facebook. No sé si lo habéis visto, que a lo mejor os ha... Porque ese señor hablaba a mucha gente, es de la ecualdea, la espiral, o algo así se llamaba.
Ajá. No conozco.
Hay una por ahí en esa zona, por lo menos. Hay más. Pero él la vendía como tal. No sé si serán 2 personas que viven ahí o 2 casas y poco más, pero había gente que se había metido con él. Bueno, Anacor está ahí. Hola.
Hola, Iván. Lo que pasa es que el internet es tan padre. Oí que vamos a tener un intermedio.